Hello, good evening, everyone. Good evening, and it's a pleasure to be with the Bangalore International Festival. And thanks to them and Galata for giving us this opportunity to share a few thoughts about a wonderful mystical journey. I would rather call it a magical journey of somebody who's a dear friend of mine, a movie maker, a reputed movie maker once, whose film won awards and now turned into a monument maker who built a stupa. And where is the stupa? It's at the heart of Yorkshire at Howard House. So I think I would love to talk to David Lascelles, the 8th Earl of Howard, to ask him a few questions, if I may, David. Welcome to the session. And to start with, I think everybody knows what you are doing so far, but this is an intriguing journey from a movie making to a monument making. So there is so much to know about it, but we have just 20 minutes to talk to you about this, and then 10 minutes we take questions from the audience. I know that you did the Buddhist Trilogy in 1984, Tibet. That's a documentary you made.
1977, actually.
Oh, really? Even as far as that?
Yeah.
But you know, what attracted, what made you, what motivated you to start this thought about building a monument right in the Yorkshire region? What was the...
Well, first of all, good evening, everybody. Namaste from the evening there, afternoon here, from wintry and misty Yorkshire, very unlike what the weather is where you are. Where did it all begin? Well, it's a difficult question, really. I mean, really, the full way of answering it, of course, is to read the book, but I would say that, wouldn't I? I first went to India with my parents when I was a boy in 1961. Then I went there my gap year, 1969. That's how I first came into contact with India, became interested in Indian culture in a more general way, not just Buddhism. But really, the connection with Buddhism came to do with the film that you mentioned. Which actually was filmed in 1977, then re-released later on after that. This is a film called Tibetan Buddhist Trilogy, and we were filming in all the Tibetan exile communities up and down the length of the subcontinent. We were in the Bailakupe, not so far from Bangalore, Mysore state. We filmed in Dharamsala, where His Holiness the Dalai Lama is based. We filmed in Dehradun. We filmed in Ladakh, and that summer, at a time when Ladakh had only just opened to tourists. So that was the time really where a more general interest in the East turned into something a little bit more focused, to do with a fascination with Tibet, which I'd had since a boy, reading the stories, the amazing stories of exploration of Tibet. And that's where that sort of general interest turned into something more specific.
So can you say the seeds of this stupa was sown in 1977 when you started this film?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I think that was really when the seed first started. Actually, it was interesting. I was referring to my trip with my parents when I was just 10 years old to India and to Japan. We went at that same time. And when my mother died a few years ago, we were going through her stuff. I came across a copy of a diary which was typed out, nicely presented, which I'd written at the time, which I'd completely forgotten about. And in there is a description of a Japanese pagoda, which is actually the Japanese equivalent of a stupa, the same symbolism. And with quite a detailed description, this is a 10-year-old, detailed description of what all the shapes in the spire meant, the 13 rings, the crescent moon, the sun and moon on top, and so on and so forth. So somehow, somewhere at the age of 10 years old, I had that interest. Where that came from and where that disappeared to, who knows? But that's, I suppose, one of the things that came bubbling up all those years later.
You know, in your book, The Hare-Marked Moon, there is a detailed description of these monks from Bhutan. And how did they come over? Was it a huge cultural shock for them? You must have had a lot of effort you must have put in to bring them over. Food, language, everything, the weather. So how did they adjust? What was it like for you? And
well,
for them?
I first went to Bhutan in 2002 to visit a friend who was involved with a project over there. And the idea of having a stupa in the gardens here at Hare had been a sort of vague idea. Wouldn't it be nice if kind of idea for some years before that. But going to Bhutan, first time I'd been in the Himalayas for some years, and kind of reconnecting with that part of the world, which I've always felt a strong connection to, and seeing how there were stupas everywhere there, in every village, every mountain, every square, the courtyard of every monastery, on the top of every mountain pass, and so on. I started to wonder whether that's something that we could make a reality here. And that's where my friend, through various sort of friends of friends and connections, that's how I met when I met Lama Sonam, the Bhutanese master builder of stupas, and he agreed to come over with 3 assistants to make the stupa here. This was 2004. As you say, there were lots of obstacles. As I said, language, food, weather. The Yorkshire sense of humour, which, as you know, Geetha, is a very particular thing. And they'd never travelled before. None of them had been in an aeroplane before. None of them had been really outside the Himalayan region before. So none of them had been on the motorway. None of them had seen the ocean. So it was a huge cultural leap, which could have ended up disastrously. But they were very keen to do it. They were very excited about coming. And yeah, it all grew from there, really. The point of having them here was that what we agreed from the very beginning, if we were going to build a stupa, we had to do it absolutely authentically, exactly the same as it would have been made in India or Nepal or Tibet or and so on. That it couldn't be a kind of a pastiche, or it couldn't be a mock-up. It had to be the real thing done in the real and proper way, with people who really understood what building a stupa meant and how to do it.
So they built everything from scratch, from the bare ground, from there the whole thing was erected. Is that right? They brought things from Bhutan?
Yes. I mean, the actual work was a combination of things, really. The physical building work was done by local builders, the actual putting of the stones together, which the Bhutanese took a little time to come to terms with. I think traditionally in Bhutan they'd have built everything themselves. And there was a kind of transition period, really, of trying to make them understand building methods here. If people were going to, a lot of the dimensions are very precise. So a lot of the stones that go into making a stupa have to be cut to size. So everything had to be very, very accurately rendered on paper so that Yorkshire builders could interpret these. But all the other things, that the meaning of the stupa, both in the outer design, but also what goes inside it. And the stupa is a hollow structure, series of chambers built up from the base all the way up to the dome and to the spire that rises above that. So what those chambers are and what has to go in them is very precise: images, offerings, prayers, and so on. And then the series of pujas which have to happen once the chamber is filled. So each chamber is filled as if it was a little shrine room of its own, as it were, and then sealed in, and then the next layer built on top of that. And that's what the monks were really chiefly involved in, making sure that that was done absolutely right. A lot of work, very meticulous, very precise.
And very thoroughly done, and tremendous effort by them, I think. Tremendous effort to build it up the way, tremendous efforts they put in to build it just the way it is in Bhutan or wherever, Tibet.
Yeah.
The monks, yeah. So was there any wow moment and anything we said, oh no, that shouldn't have happened? Whether many or just one or two?
Well, I mean, the whole thing is a bit of a wow moment, really, for me. I mean, the whole process was extraordinary. It was extraordinary summer. They were here for 3 or 4 months. But then what's happened subsequently, really, as the stupa has really established itself, and if you believe, as I believe, and as Buddhists definitely believe, that stupas are not just a monument and not just a sort of elegantly constructed pile of stone, that they have a very real and strong presence spiritually, geographically, and in every way, the way of bringing things together, a point of focus, a point of harmony. And if that is so, how has that affected this place? Home, my family's home, where families lived for 250 years. And how does that affect the people who visit? Our house is open to the public. We get around 200,000 visitors a year. Amazingly, even this COVID-ridden last year, we had around 200,000. And many of them walk past the stupa. The vast majority of those, of course, aren't Buddhist, don't know what a stupa is, but people are affected by it. They seem to be, they change, their behavior changes just a little bit when they're in the presence of it. So low points. Well, some of the low point was before we even started. The night before we were due to fly from Bhutan, that was the 4 monks of the party, myself, and my grown-up daughter, Emily, who'd come with me to help me with the logistics of all that. Well, I had what I suppose you could describe as a bit of a panic attack, sort of lying in my hotel room, thinking, this is a disaster. What am I thinking of? We're going to go to Delhi. We're not going to be able to get the visas. When we arrive in England, even if we do get the visas, it'll be one of those horrible airport experiences where everybody's taken away and strip searched. The monks will hate it when they come to everything. All the things that could go wrong were kind of whirling around in my mind. And I remember sitting there in bed and starting to write down the note I was going to tell to everybody in the morning, saying, listen, this was a great idea. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but that's it. The project is not going to happen. And then I fell asleep, and half an hour later was woken by the call to go to the airport at the crack of dawn, and it all went ahead as you would expect. Right? But there were some big moments of doubt, particularly the build-up. Once we'd started, it all developed its own momentum.
It's a huge challenge, and I'm sure you felt very, very rewarded when it was completed. Great satisfaction, yeah. I was also looking at the book title, The Hare-Marked Moon, and I was thinking often the Eastern folklore refers to the moon with a hare in it. So why was this title and what's behind this? It's a very interesting book with thorough diagrams and the rest of it about the stupa, geometrical diagrams in great detail. But I was intrigued by this.
Well, the book is in two halves. And the first part is very much about the making of the stupa and how and the build up to that, and it ends with the consecration of the stupa. The second part is sort of almost doing my research backwards. Is me traveling, trying to what are stupas? What do they mean? Where do they come from? Where are the first ones built? Why were they built there? The stories behind the building of some of the most famous ones. So that's the second half of the book. Is more sort of reflective of what I was saying just now, what the stupa means, what having a stupa here in the middle of Yorkshire, what that means. The title directly comes from some verses in praise of the meditation deity Tara. It goes, homage to Tara, eyes like lightning instantaneous, resplendent as 1,000 stars, joyous, radiant, holding in her hand the hare-marked moon.
Beautiful.
So, it's a lovely little bit of verse. Hare-marked moon's got nothing to do with Harewood, as some people have thought it would. It's an image that occurs in many places. It's in the Jataka tales, the Buddhist tales, the tales of Buddha's earlier lives.
Yes.
There's a story about how a hare in the forest saves him from starvation when he's in his sort of ascetic mode of exploring the path to liberation. There's another story actually which I quote in some detail in the book about a young prince who sacrifices himself to a mother tiger so she can feed her cubs. Similar theme about sacrifice for the greater good. It's common across many cultures, actually, as I'm sure you know. I mean, there are similar tales in Chinese culture, in Japanese culture. Apparently, it's the basis for some sort of contemporary Japanese animations are based loosely around their stories from the Jataka tales. North American culture as well. It's there, that the image of a hare in the moon, this rather mysterious, magical, mystical creature that the hare is, being up there in the moon, doing whatever it is that hares do. Nobody understands what they do on this planet, let alone any other.
There's many lovely pictures, color pictures in this book as well, which sort of gives us a story of how this whole stupa was built. I read it thoroughly, and this is now available on Amazon, David, as well as it's being in the stalls of the Bangalore International Festival for those who want to buy it. So that's great. And I think it's brought something very different to Yorkshire. I'm not sure there are many stupas in England except this one.
There are very few. There are some in Scotland. There's a big Tibetan Buddhist centre in Dumfriesshire, just over the Scottish border. I know there are many stupas there. But in England, very, very few. There's probably the best known one is the Peace Pagoda in Battersea Park in London, which is a focus for many things. But
this is a different one, totally different. And I'm sure, this will attract a lot of people, nationally and international visitors to Harewood House. And the listeners here in the Bangalore International Festival are very welcome to Yorkshire to have a look at the stupa and visit Harewood House, which is one of the most beautiful stately homes in Yorkshire, in Leeds. And you want to add anything else, David, before we start taking questions from the listeners?
The what, sorry, anything?
Anything else would you like to add about the story, this wonderful story you've narrated now?
Not really. I mean, it's been an extraordinary project, and a project that, like the best projects, you start with some sort of a dream, some sort of an aim, and then it develops, it changes into something that isn't necessarily what you first thought of, sometimes worse, sometimes better. And this, in the same way, has evolved and evolved into become something that's become very important for me personally in my life. And it's something that's become quite important for Howard, for this place too. So that's what stupas are designed to do, and that's what I'm delighted to say what the one in here has to a great extent.
Yeah, I think perseverance pays. That's what I've learned from this stupa lesson. Yeah, wonderful. Thank you for that. And let's ask if there are any questions from the listeners. I think there's something in the chat box. No questions yet. Till they come up, yes. Well, everybody's, I think, just listening to you building a stupa in Harewood House in Yorkshire. People must be just wondering what went on there, I was just wondering, the other very beautiful thing I liked is the mandala paintings they did, these monks.
Yeah, but I mean, the sun mandala, making the sun mandala was extraordinary, which was made for the consecration. This is for those in the audience who are not familiar. I mean, I'm sure most of you are familiar with what a mandala is, but this is one that is made out of coloured grains of sand. This is a board marked out, geometrically marked out, which is gradually filled in with sand of different colours to make this extraordinary pattern. It's a remarkable thing to watch being made. There's one story I'd quite like to tell from the making of the stupa, which
sure.
Always find amusing, which was the old Lama Sonam, who was in charge, the Bhutanese in charge of the project, had should we call it a mischievous side, which there was a lot of humour, a lot of laughter during the making of the stupa, and for one of the chambers there was a particular deity, Chogda, who was a sort of deity of wealth. I mean, a human-shaped one, but many of the qualities of Ganesh, actually, of sort of wealth and so on. And Lama Sonam said, for this chamber, for this deity, we need to make a very special offering, a 99 fruit offering. So you have to find 99 dried fruits to go into this chamber as an offering to him. I said, well, that's impossible. Could you name 99 fruits in the whole world? Bhutan, not famous for its fruit and vegetables. We maybe find 5 different kinds of fruit in the market in Bhutan. So Lama Sonam said, well, that's what it says in the text. That's what you've got to do. So I went on a great hunt to Indian supermarkets in Bradford and Leeds, health food shops, my own kitchen shelf, bringing everything together that I possibly could. And to my amazement, I found I got up to 47 different kinds of dried fruit, raisins and cardamom and all kinds of different things. But of course, not even halfway there, still 52 missing. So I went to Lama Tsolam and told him, listen, I've done my best, but this is really this is the best I can do. And he looked very, very, very sadly and shook his head and pulled from inside his robe this little plastic packet with this undefined substance in it. Waved it, grey, nasty-looking stuff. He said, "This is 99 fruit powder, David. This is what."
He could have told you that in the beginning.
Certainly could. He certainly could. He was sending me on a wild goose chase. Yeah.
But it's a wonderful story and very inspirational indeed. And I'm sure the listeners would have enjoyed listening to you and would surely want to travel to Yorkshire if this COVID thing ceases. To have, and everybody's very welcome. So beautiful stupa erected there. Thank you so much for being with us and sharing your lovely story, David. Thank you so much, and namaste. Thanks to Atha Galata and the Bradford Bangalore International Festival.